He took the company I built and called me unstable. Said I wasn't strong enough to lead, that I was too emotional to scale. So he erased my name from the company I created. No meeting. No explanation. Just a press release and a smug quote in Forbes. I didn't respond. Didn't post. Didn't fight back. I disappeared. Into a house he didn't know about. On a lake he never paid attention to. They thought I'd vanished, but silence has depth. Silence learns, calculates, builds. It was fall when the email arrived. Avery forwarded it out of courtesy. Subject line: 20-year greenlight gala, honoring our founder, singular, founder, his name. Everywhere, my nowhere. But I still had the original charter. Still had the clause. Still had the file they forgot existed. I still had ArcLight. The lake outside was still that morning. Too still. The kind of stillness that dares you to move. Steam curled off my coffee. No cream, no sweetness. Just dark, bitter clarity. It tasted like the last 5 years. I used to believe in fairness. Now I believe in leverage. Avery used to be my assistant. She called me mentor, said I inspired her. She now shares his bed. Wears my old title. Sits in my chair. I don't hate her. I don't have the energy for that. Hate is noisy. I prefer silence. Silence doesn't need to explain itself. I walked along the dock barefoot. Wood chilled under my feet. Leaves scattered like regret across the water. Reed never came here. Said it was too quiet for his brain. Too still, that was the point. This lake held every moment I couldn't say out loud. Every boardroom betrayal. Every vote they took behind my back. Every Vivian's taking time for herself lie they spun while changing the locks on my legacy. I didn't need revenge. I needed to remember who I was before their edits. They wrote me out. But I kept the outline. ArcLight was never just a fund. It was leverage. A sleeping signature clause in a dormant entity that required my consent for any merger, sale, or partnership over $50 million. They forgot. But I didn't. I opened the laptop I hadn't touched in weeks. Typed in the passphrase I'd created the night Reed first called me overreactive. The screen flickered, loaded. And there it was. Clause 14B. Authorization structure unchanged. My name in bold. Architectural lead V. Kessler final executive signatory required for activation. No one else. No workaround. No loophole. Not even him. I closed the laptop, stared out across the water. In the ballroom where he planned to announce the merger, there would be flowers, speeches, applause, but no deal. Not without me. I wasn't going as a guest. I wasn't going to clap. I was going to remind them who built the ground they're standing on. I dialed a number I hadn't called in years. It rang twice. Then a voice. Vivian, Dorian. My old lawyer, the only one who didn't flinch when they pushed me out. I need you to bring the originals, I said. Pause. To the gala, he asked. No, I said. To war. I hung up. Finished the coffee. Let the bitter stay on my tongue just a second longer than I needed. The invitation sat unopened on the counter. I picked it up, read it slowly. Then lit a match. Let it burn in the sink. No evidence. No announcement. I wasn't coming back. I was taking the roof down. I stood in front of the mirror in the hallway. Hair tied. No jewelry, no makeup. Just my reflection. The version of me they forgot still knew how to walk into a room and change the story. Tomorrow, I'd do it with 5 sheets of paper and a smile he wouldn't recognize. They wanted a founder, they'd get one. But not the kind that claps. Not the kind that thanks them for taking credit. The kind that owns what they think they stole. And reminds them how easily it can all be revoked. Tomorrow I speak. But not with words. With signatures and silence. The kind that ends careers. The kind that starts something new. He doesn't know I still own the signature that funds his entire future. But he'll find out under a spotlight. With Avery at his side. And the world watching. I won't raise my voice. I'll just raise the contract. He once said founders don't build, they inspire. Then smiled and signed off on everything I created. We started Greenlight on my kitchen table. I was still finishing grad school. He'd just left his second startup after selling it for less than he told anyone. He brought charisma. I brought clarity. He called it division of labor. I called it foreshadowing. The bones of Greenlight, the capital structure, the system logic, the layered risk frameworks. I designed them all. He knew how to pitch it, but I knew how to make it work. There's a difference between being visible and being vital. The first few years were war. Funding rounds. Doubt from banks. Long nights rewriting models because someone at Deloitte didn't feel confident. He drank coffee. I swallowed my pride. But we made it. Series A, then B. Then C, $40 million on the table. And suddenly he was the visionary. The press liked him. They liked his laugh. His suits. The fact that he didn't blink on camera. They called me methodical. Reserved. Difficult to read. I took that as a compliment. He took it as a threat. Avery came during year 4. Fresh from NYU. Quick, polished. Asked good questions. I trained her, trusted her. Let her sit in on meetings no intern had any right being in. She took notes, watched closely. Always smiled with her lips, never her eyes. I should have known. The first time I saw them talking too closely in the elevator, I told myself it was nothing. The first time she wore the same scent I used to wear, I told myself I was imagining it. The first time she came into work wearing his cufflink on a chain around her neck, that was the last time I lied to myself. But I didn't react. Didn't scream. Didn't beg. I just started watching. He started requesting executive-only strategy calls. Leaving me off CCs. Holding one-on-ones with board members over drinks I wasn't invited to. Then came the vote. He told me it was routine. Just to formalize your transition out of daily operations. He used the word transition like it was a gift. It wasn't. It was a coup. They handed me a plaque. A thank you letter. A floral arrangement. And a list of passwords that no longer worked. I didn't fight it, because I already knew something he didn't. The skeleton of Greenlight was wired with protections he'd never understand because he never built them. Like ArcLight. It wasn't a fund. It was a firewall. My firewall. The merger he wants to announce relies on a funding package tied directly to that clause. The clause that requires my signature. Still live. Still legal. Still mine. They never saw it because they never looked for it. Because they thought the work was beneath them. I let him walk around like a king. Let her sit on my throne. Let the world believe I'd bowed out. But I didn't disappear. I stepped back. That's different. When you step back, you see the whole board. And now I've lined up every piece. Dorian texted me this morning. Paperwork prepped. You ready? I replied with one word. Sharp. That's how I feel. Not angry. Not broken. Just sharpened. That's the thing about letting someone take credit for the house you built. They think the deed disappeared when your name got painted over. But the foundation still has your initials etched beneath the floorboards. They just forgot to check. I went to the basement today. Dusted off the box I hadn't opened since year 1. Inside original cap table printouts, a USB with our first term sheet, a post-it with his handwriting that said, "Whatever happens, we do this together." I almost laughed. Almost. Instead, I folded it in half and dropped it into the fire. No rage, no ritual, just closure. The phone rang again this afternoon. Avery. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail. Hey. Just wanted to let you know we're confirming the seating for the gala. You're still on the list as honorary founder, but we weren't sure if you'd want a reserved seat. Honorary? I don't want a seat. I want the table. She ended the message with a fake chuckle. If we don't see you, hope you're well. Reed sends his best. I deleted it. Didn't blink. The lake was calm again tonight. Too calm. But I didn't mind. Tomorrow it begins. Not the drama. Not the revenge. The realignment. Everything is structured now. And when he steps on stage to announce a merger worth $110 million, the press-watching partners cheering. He'll find one line missing, one box unchecked, and one name he can't ignore anymore. Mine. He built a kingdom on borrowed ground. Tomorrow I pull the deed. I won't wear red. I won't storm in. I'll walk through the front door in silence. And I'll leave with everything they thought I was too quiet to keep. No warning, just a signature, just a shift. And the sound of him losing the room. He'll smile for the camera, raise the mic, and see me in the front row. I won't raise a hand, I won't raise my voice. But I'll raise the one document that makes the entire empire pause. The first time I met her, she wore flats, hair tucked, voice careful, notebook open before I even sat down. "I'm Avery," she said. "Just happy to learn." I believed her. That was mistake number one. Back then she asked about everything. Every fund structure. Every tax shield. Every clause I'd ever written that no one else noticed. I liked her questions. Liked the way she listened. I even told Reed she might be a real asset. He smiled. He always smiles when he's making space for betrayal. Mistake number two. By year 2, she was managing my calendar, reading my email, carrying my laptop before I even reached for it. She started dressing sharper. Lipstick redder, shoes higher. And then, one day she wore my perfume. Not similar, the exact one. I said nothing. But I switched scents the next week. That's how you know a woman's noticed something. She doesn't say it. She changes course. The day she moved offices, I knew it was over. Reed said it was temporary. That she needed more space for client relations. He always had a gift for making degradation sound like logistics. Her new desk sat outside his door. No more flats. Heels now, Louboutin. Too high for someone just happy to learn. One morning, I arrived early. 7:15. She didn't hear me come in. She was in his office. Sitting on the desk. Legs crossed. Phone in hand. Reading from a draft I'd written 3 nights earlier. She laughed. He looked up, caught my reflection in the glass, and for a full second he froze. But he didn't flinch. He stood, buttoned his blazer. "Vivian didn't know you were coming in today." I said nothing. Avery turned. Her smile too tight. Her lipstick too perfect. Morning, she chirped. As if I hadn't built the floor she was standing on. I walked past her. Straight to the server room, downloaded everything. Then left. 3 weeks later, I stepped down. Officially. The press called it a graceful exit. She posted a quote, "The best leaders know when to let go." Captioned it number, "Women in Leadership." I should have been furious. But fury is short-sighted. What I felt was colder. Cleaner. The kind of cold that plans. She reached out 6 months later. Texted me a photo of her at the Paris FinTech conference, Reed by her side. She wrote, "You taught me so much, hope I'm making you proud." I never replied. But I saved the picture. The day the gala invite arrived, so did a link. Anonymous sender. Subject line, "You might want to see this before the party." I clicked. It was a clip. Avery. In front of a white wall. Greenlight's logo behind her. She was reading from a teleprompter. Reed Kessler's vision built this company. His courage, his unwavering belief in innovation. Not our courage, not our belief, just his. Her lipstick, same red I used to wear the year I closed our first deal. She looked into the camera. Almost dead on. "I'm honored to support him as we prepare for the most ambitious chapter yet." And then she smiled. That kind of smile women wear when they think they've won. I didn't blink. Didn't pause the video. Didn't rewind. Just closed the tab. I walked to the back room. Pulled open the old cabinet. Pulled out the green folder marked F24, Founder's Clause, redline copy. Her voice echoed in my head. Hope I'm making you proud. I didn't laugh, but I did whisper something. Not to her. Not to him. To the room. To the silence. You haven't even seen what I really kept. Tomorrow night she'll wear red. Smile for cameras. Kiss the man who took everything from me. And then I'll raise the one document that makes her entire future pause. Because she may have learned from me. But she forgot the most important rule of power. Don't build your castle on someone else's foundation unless you know who still holds the deed. And Avery. She never read the fine print. They took my name off the website, but forgot I still own the lock on the vault. And tomorrow night in front of every investor, I'll turn the key. Every system has a weak point, even the ones you design yourself. Especially the ones you built with someone who thought your silence meant submission. I kept everything. Not because I planned to use it, but because I knew they would forget to lock the door after they pushed me out. And they did. The server credentials expired. But the legacy backup still tied to my personal encryption. No one changed it. Because no one knew it existed. That was mistake number 3. I booted the drive that night with hands steady. Not excited, not angry. Just ready. The folders blinked to life. Cold blue light against my face. Internal. Legal, partnership drafts. Year 20 I opened the most recent. There it was. The merger draft. Greenlight Capital, Volaris Investment Group. Estimated valuation $118 million. Completion clause 10/21. Tomorrow night, the room will be full, press, partners. The board. And no one knows they need my consent for the deal to go through. Because tucked into the funding mechanism buried beneath 3 shells is one name. ArcLight Holdings. Still legally active. Still designated as critical pre-approval asset. Still 100% under my personal control. I created ArcLight when Reed wanted a flexible liquidity option for future philanthropic investment rounds. He didn't care about the legal scaffolding. Said it was your world, Viv. Signed off without reading. He thought it was just another name in a sea of funding entities. It wasn't. ArcLight was the hinge. The hidden bolt on which the entire merger swings. And now he's about to step on stage to announce a deal he has no legal right to close. Unless I sign. And I won't. The merger clause is airtight. Clause 14b. Secondary verification required from ArcLight's founding principal. Me, I scrolled down the PDF. The final page was blank. Waiting for the signature. I hovered my cursor over the e-sign prompt, then closed the file, number. Not here, not in private. He took my face off the company website. Removed my name from the founder's plaque. Deleted my bio from press kits. But forgot that signatures leave fingerprints in places he'll never reach. I printed the clause. 5 copies, 1 for the board. 1 for legal. 1 for media just in case. 2 for me. The house was silent except for the printer. Paper sliding out slow, methodical like breath. When the last page dropped, I slipped them into a black folder. No labels, no drama. Just proof. Downstairs, I opened the old lockbox. Inside, my original equity certificate. Hand-signed by both of us. Dated the 2nd of August 2005. I ran my finger over the ink. Faded now, but still sharp. Back then, he called me the spine of the company. Now he calls me nothing at all. But the spine is what holds the body upright. Without it, everything collapses. I closed the box. Clicked the latch shut. Then I wrote 1 sentence on a post-it and stuck it to the top of the folder. They forgot I remember everything. The next morning, I called Dorian. He answered instantly. You have it, I didn't need to reply. I'll bring the original copies, he said. Boardroom or ballroom? First, I said. Then let's take them to church. He laughed. But it wasn't a warm sound. More like metal grinding against stone. I ended the call. No second thoughts. No what ifs, just breath. and paper, and memory. Avery once told me I was too methodical, that I overprepared. She said it like a flaw. Tomorrow, she'll find out what methodical really looks like. Because while they were playing PR, I was preserving chain of custody. While they were polishing shoes, I was printing clauses. While they rehearsed their lines, I drafted a reality they don't know how to rewrite. And the final act has already been signed. Just not by me. Not yet. Tomorrow night, they'll dim the lights, raise the champagne, and call it a legacy. But they'll be standing on a deal that isn't legal without me. And when they finally realize it, I'll already be holding the microphone. The valet didn't recognize me. He reached for the wrong name on the list. Mrs. Callahan. I shook my head. Vivian Kessler. He blinked. Searched again. Then smiled like he knew but couldn't place me. It says +0. Shall I walk you in? I didn't answer. Just stepped onto the marble. Let the silence walk in with me. Inside the ballroom glittered. Warm golds. Champagne flutes catching light. Laughter bouncing off ceilings that cost more than my first year of equity. It looked exactly the way I'd designed it, down to the uplights. The mirrored panels. The stage height. They hadn't changed a thing, except the name on the banner. Celebrating 20 years of vision, Reed Kessler, founder and CEO. Founder. I walked slowly. No need to rush. No one expected me to do anything but smile and disappear. That's what they taught women like me. Say less. Look good, fade out, not tonight. The assistant at the check-in table looked up. Oh, wow. Miss Kessler. We weren't sure you'd. I held up my hand. She stopped speaking. I'll find my seat. The name card at table 6 said Vivian Kessler, former partner, former. Like I'd been a summer intern. Like I hadn't spent 10 years sleeping under my desk to save their quarterly burn rate. I sat down. Back straight. Folder in my bag. One hand resting over it. Still. Reed was already across the room. Tuxedo sharp. Cufflinks gleaming. The kind of man who thought polish meant power. Avery stood beside him. Red dress. High slit. The smile of someone who thinks she's untouchable. She caught my eye. Just for a moment. And for the first time she looked unsure. I didn't blink. Didn't nod. Let the stillness speak for me. The crowd began to shift. Glasses clinked. The string quartet paused. Lights dimmed. Someone on mic. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the man of the hour, the reason we're all here tonight. Reed Kessler. Applause. Too loud, too practiced. I didn't clap. He stepped onto the stage. Comfortable. Charming. A performer at home in his spotlight. 20 years ago he began. Greenlight was just an idea. Pause for effect. Built on instinct. On vision. On the belief that risks create revolutions. He never mentioned me. Not once. Not a name, not a nod. Just anecdote, wrapped in ego, sealed with omission. They handed him a commemorative plaque. Custom crystal. Etched with gold. He lifted it. Smiled. Avery kissed his cheek. Camera flashes went off. Then came the line. And tonight I'm proud to share that we're entering a bold new chapter. A merger with Valeris Group, the largest in our firm's history. Applause, again. Standing this time. Except for me. I reached into my bag. Lifted the folder. Laid it flat on the white linen. Didn't move. Then I stood. Quiet. Controlled. And walked toward the side of the stage. Security didn't stop me. They assumed I was meant to be there. Because when you walk like you on the floor, no one questions your presence. At the foot of the stairs, Reed noticed me. He faltered. Just slightly. That signature twitch in his jaw when he's about to be caught but still hopes he isn't. I held up the folder. One sheet. Visible. The clause. He recognized it instantly. His face changed. So did hers. Avery's hand dropped from his arm. She mouthed something. I didn't hear it, didn't care, I climbed one step. Just one. Enough for everyone to see me. Then I spoke, not through a mic. Just loud enough for the silence to fall. Clause 14b. The crowd stopped. Even the music tech froze with his hand over the fader. I held up the paper. No merger without my signature. Reed tried to speak. Vivian, this isn't the time, but it was. It always had been. You forgot I built the architecture, I said. And I buried the bolt that holds it all together. He stepped forward, whispered. We can discuss this privately. I smiled. No, Reed. You chose the spotlight. He looked at Avery. She looked away. For the first time, he was standing alone on the stage he built on someone else's foundation. The room held its breath. So did he. I turned. Walked off the step. Back to my seat. No rush. No glance over the shoulder. Let the paper speak for itself. Behind me they scrambled. Whispers. Phone calls. A man in a navy suit heading toward the legal rep. I didn't stay to watch it fall. I already knew how it would end. Not with noise, not with spectacle. With compliance. He thought the stage was his crowning moment. He didn't realize it was the scene of his undoing. And I didn't need a mic to end the show. They thought I would blink. That I'd walk up there, hand him the document, and quietly let it go. Instead, I sat down, crossed my legs, unclipped the folder, and began unfolding the truth. Clause 14b. My clause. The one no one ever read. The one they pretended didn't exist. Now printed on 5 sheets on crisp white stock in the middle of a table they could no longer ignore. The general counsel approached me first. Hair slicked. Smile forced. I think there's a misunderstanding, Miss Kessler. He tried to reach for the papers. I placed my hand on top of them. There was no misunderstanding. You're about to execute a deal that requires my signature. You do not have it. His smile faltered. Reed stepped off the stage. Eyes locked on mine. Vivian, we don't have to do this here. But we do, because this is where you erased me. In front of everyone. Now they'll watch as I return the favor. Avery hovered behind him. Not speaking. Just watching. Like a soldier who knows the war's already lost. I stood. Handed one copy to the legal team. One to the board secretary. One to the Valeris rep. He skimmed it, stopped. Looked up at Reed. This changes things. Reed stepped in fast. We've handled this internally. No, I said. You buried it. I turned to the crowd. Investors, clients, media. All of them silent now. You heard him say this merger was complete. I held up the paper. It's not. The Valeris rep leaned to his associate, they whispered. Pulled out a tablet, compared notes. I could see the moment it landed. The instant they realized this wasn't a stunt. It was real, legal, binding. The lights didn't dim. No gasps. No breakdown. Just a shift. One so sharp it cracked the illusion. The board chair rose. Miss Tang. She looked tired, but focused. Is this valid? Yes, I said. I wrote it. Pause. Is your signature required? I nodded. Are you willing to give it number? Simple, quiet. Final, Reed tried again. His voice softer now. Viv. This could ruin everything. Then maybe everything shouldn't have been built on the assumption that I'd stay quiet forever. His face collapsed without moving. No anger, no threat, just deflation. The kind that comes when the mask stops working. Behind me someone stood, applauded. One clap. Slow, then stopped. It wasn't support, it was surrender. A ripple of movement followed. People gathering their coats, quiet exits, phone screens lighting up. The Valeris rep closed his tablet. We'll need to pause all announcements pending compliance review. Translation deals dead. Avery whispered something in Reed's ear. He didn't react. I gathered the remaining copies. Slipped them into the folder. Snapped it shut. You never thought I'd say no, I said. He looked up. his voice small. "You were always the quiet one." "Not anymore." I turned, didn't rush. No applause. No anthem. Just shoes on polished marble and the sound of everything falling in behind me. Outside the night was sharp, cold wind across my collarbone. Seattle skyline humming in the background. The silence followed me. Not empty but earned. I texted Dorian. "Clause delivered. Deal dead. We're clear." He replied confirmed. Media already asking questions. "You ready?" I stared at the screen. Then typed always. Reed told them I was unstable. Too fragile to stay, too soft to fight. But the signature he needed was the one I never gave. And the deal he bragged about just became his public undoing. The elevator ride was silent. Just me, the folder, and the weight of a decade compressed into 5 sheets of paper. The receptionist didn't ask where I was going. He didn't need to. My name still triggered access on the private boardroom floor. They forgot to disable it, because they assumed I'd never come back. When the doors opened, it was all still there. Same gray carpets, same frosted glass with etched logos. Same coffee table I'd chosen myself, and they now gathered around like it was holy ground. 8 chairs. 7 occupied. 1 at the end left open. They thought it was for someone else. An empty seat. A courtesy. But it had always been mine. I walked in. No announcement. No pause. Just presence. Reed looked up, his tie was gone. Shirt collar open. Eyes tired in a way I'd never seen. He started to speak. I sat down first. The chair didn't creak, but the air did. I set the folder on the table. Neat. Centered. Then waited. No one said a word. Until Miss Tang finally spoke. Her voice calm. Measured. "Miss Kessler, we weren't expecting. You should've." She nodded. I turned to the room. Made eye contact, one by one. Some looked away, some didn't. I wasn't here for apologies. I was here for realignment. I'll keep this short. I slid the documents forward. Legal summaries. Clause histories. The full audit trail that no one thought I kept. You all approved a merger based on incomplete authority. Reed knew that. So did Avery. The CFO David shifted uncomfortably. You were never informed, I continued. But silence doesn't erase responsibility. Reed cleared his throat. She's twisting this. I turned to him. Flat, level. Say another word and I'll unseal the arbitration transcript. He froze. Not because he believed I would, but because he knew I already had. Miss Tang lifted the top page. Read it. Then leaned back in her chair, took off her glasses. This is valid. I said nothing. She looked at Reed. Did you knowingly omit her signature? He didn't answer. She turned to the others. I move for a closed session vote on leadership integrity and compliance. No one objected, no lawyers. No debate. They passed around the slips of paper. 1 minute. 2. Then folded. Collected. Counted. 6 in favor of removal, 1 abstain. 1 against. It was done. Just like that. Reed didn't stand, didn't argue. Didn't look at me. Only whispered. You wanted to destroy me. I shook my head. Number, I just stopped protecting you. He stood, left without taking his phone. Or his pride. Avery wasn't in the room. She didn't need to be. She'd be gone by morning. Miss Tang turned to me. We'll need interim leadership. For stability. I didn't respond. She continued. You know this company. You know its bones. I looked out the window. Rain streaked the glass in long, deliberate lines. I'm not here to come back, I said. I'm here to close the loop. Pause. But I'll help you name someone better than all of us. David cleared his throat. Then said something I hadn't heard in years. Welcome back, Vivian. I nodded. But I wasn't really back. I just walked through the door they locked, thinking I'd never return. And now I held the keys. Not for power, but for precision. He built a stage with my silence as the foundation. Now that silence has turned into structure. And the seat they left empty was never empty at all. The office was exactly as I left it, same walnut desk. Same window view overlooking the sound. Same chair. Except the nameplate was gone, not replaced, just missing. They'd taken it down after I left, or maybe after they made me leave. I never asked. I didn't need the name to know the room was still mine. I stood in the doorway. Didn't step in, let the silence fill it first. The air still smelled of eucalyptus and ink. Like meetings that ran too long. And decisions made too fast. The assistant outside knew Young looked up startled. Do you want me to put the plate back up? I shook my head. No need. I stepped inside. Ran my fingers along the edge of the desk. Smooth. Polished. But still carried the groove where I used to tap my pen thinking through pivot models. Legacy doesn't need labels. It leaves marks in the grain. I didn't sit. Just opened the top drawer. Nothing personal. Just files. And a paperweight they hadn't moved. It still read, build quietly. Own completely. A gift from the old CTO. The one they ousted a year before me. Funny how truth survives even when people don't. I turned. Looked out the window. Seattle blinked below. Rain pressing soft patterns on glass. The world moving like it always did with or without me. There was a time I believed I had to stay visible to stay powerful. Now I knew better. Visibility is a trap when it's not on your terms. Presence the real kind doesn't need lights, it just needs timing. I didn't come back to reclaim the title. Or the nameplate. Or the desk. I came back to finish the architecture. To seal the foundation they tried to hollow out. The company was stable again. The rot removed. The board aligned. I met with Miss Tang before leaving. Gave her a short list of 3 women I mentored quietly for years. All smarter than me. None interested in drama. Exactly what this place needed. Are you sure you won't stay? She asked. I smiled. I never left. She didn't argue. Smart woman. In the lobby I passed the new CEO candidate. Young. Sharp eyes. Steady posture. She nodded respectfully. Not nervously. I liked her already. At the door, the security guard held it open. He used to work nights when I still stayed till 2 a.m. He looked up, tilted his head. Back for good? No, I said. Just long enough to make sure they remember who wrote the blueprint. He grinned. I always figured it was you anyway. Outside the wind picked up. Carried with it the faint smell of coffee and wet stone. I didn't turn back. Didn't linger. I'd never needed a nameplate to make an impact. Just clarity. And a clock that only I could hear. Because some of us don't fight for the seat. We build the table, they can keep the chair, the name, the office. But every time they open a deal, review a clause, or wonder why the structure still holds, they'll find me there. Quiet, permanent, unshakable. The lake didn't ask where I'd been, it simply waited. Like it always had. The air was cooler now. Autumn settling over the shoreline like a blanket no one invited but somehow still needed. I stood on the dock, hands tucked into a worn coat, steam curling from the cup in my hand. No one around, no headlines, no spotlights, and still this was the loudest piece I'd ever known. They thought I would fight to stay. That I wanted the title back. The glass office. The nameplate, but I didn't want the chair. I wanted the room to be rebuilt right. And now that it was, I had no interest in sitting down. When I left the boardroom, I didn't look back. Just walked out with my folder and the clarity of someone who had nothing left to prove. Not to them. Not to the press. Not even to the version of myself who once begged to be seen. Power is not proving you were right. It's knowing you were and still choosing to build something better. 2 weeks after the gala, I made my first withdrawal. It wasn't cash, wasn't equity, wasn't vengeance. It was purpose. I bought a parcel of land just west of the lake, an old textile mill abandoned after the housing crash. Still sturdy. Still standing, still overlooked. Just like the women I planned to fill it with. I called it Verity Foundation. Not because I wanted a nonprofit, I wanted a firewall, a citadel. For every woman who had ever been called too emotional, too unstable, too much of a risk, we weren't unstable. We were unprotected. So, I built something that wouldn't flinch when the system tried to erase us. No glass ceilings, just steel beams and contracts written in our language. The first day of construction, I didn't wear a hard hat. I wore a gray scarf the same shade as the folder that shut down the merger. The crew didn't ask who I was, but when I walked through the frame of the main hall, they stepped aside. That's the thing about silent women. When we finally move, we don't need introduction. The foundation poured by week 4. The interior by month 2. By spring, the rooms would be ready. Training rooms. Legal clinics. Capital labs. All carved from the same silence they once mistook for surrender. I kept a chair by the front window, no plaque, no title. Just a clean surface and the view of the lake that taught me how to wait. The first woman who walked through our door wasn't who I expected. Mid-50s. Wore old heels like armor, tight jaw. Eyes that had seen too much and been told to blink it away. She didn't ask for help, she asked for space. And we gave her that. An empty room. A laptop, a clean sheet of paper. A cup of coffee without small talk. 2 hours later, she wrote the bylaws for a domestic labor rights initiative I would later quietly fund. No press. No plaque. Just a line item under community infrastructure, Verity West. They didn't need to know it was her, she just needed it to exist. That was enough. We didn't name classrooms after donors, we named them after losses turned into leverage. Room 1, the forgotten vote. Room 2, the meeting without me. Room 3, the clause they never read. And at the end of the hall, a room with no name. Just soft light, a mirror. And a locked drawer for the things women carry but never get to put down. Not everything needs a title to be sacred. At night, I'd stay behind after the staff went home. Turn off the main lights. Let the space breathe. I'd sit in the quiet. Not to think, not to plan. Just to exist. Fully. Without agenda. Sometimes I'd hear my own breath and think of all the years I held it in boardrooms so others could speak louder but say less. Now I speak only when I mean it. The first time a reporter reached out, they asked if I wanted to reframe my narrative. I told them it was never their frame to begin with. They didn't call again. One night, an envelope slid under the office door. No return address. Just a handwritten card inside. You made it out. Now you've made a way. Thank you. I didn't need to know who wrote it. I'd written versions of it in my head for years. To women I'd never met, who taught me without speaking how to endure without erasing myself. Verity wasn't a revenge story, it was a landing place. A ledger of all the value we were told we didn't create. We did. And we kept the receipts. I never withdrew the full amount from Greenlight. Never needed to. What I took back wasn't money, it was my silence, my name, my loyalty. And I reinvested it somewhere it could grow. Not for recognition, but for repair. I didn't win. I remembered. I remembered what they tried to take, what I let them borrow, and what I no longer needed back to feel whole. One afternoon, standing by the window, I saw a group of young women training in the legal clinic. They were laughing. Not performative, not cautious, just free. And I realized this was the moment I'd been waiting for. Not the boardroom, not the speech, not the win. But this an ordinary Tuesday. With women who no longer flinched at the sound of their own power. That was the real withdrawal. Not the funds, not the titles. But everything I gave to the wrong rooms for the right reasons. Now I give quietly. To places that don't need to clap to prove they're listening. And when I sit by the lake again, I don't stare into it searching for answers, I just exist. And for the first time in years, that's enough. Some stories don't end with applause. They end in quiet with a woman walking away, not because she lost, but because she finally chose peace. If this journey taught me anything, it's that power isn't about keeping the spotlight. It's about knowing when to leave it and shine it towards someone else. In life, when we stop needing credit, we start creating real change. If this story stirred something in you, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Maybe you've walked away from something too not as defeat but as the beginning of something better.